Welcome back to my Colorado Mountain Garden and Homestead. And this is the second video on the yeast fertilizer. And after I get done showing you a few things and explaining a little bit more, I'll give you the application rates that I use when I'm watering my plants or I'm just getting ready to plant plants or seeds or whatever. So stay tuned for that. But the picture over here, it is a 1 gallon pitcher, so is this one. I added the extra water to and stirred it around. Now this I'm immediately going to be, taking out to the garden and putting it on, and we'll talk a little bit about rates here in a second and how big this 1 gallon is going to go. And I remembered why I was telling you why to be careful and don't fill it all the way up, because of not only because of the foam. And before we talk about that, let me just go ahead and bring my tripod up here, and hopefully you can see how foamy it is there. And I will have a picture of what things look like after, I think the first one, sorry, got to get my tripod set back up here so it doesn't fall over. Why I was telling you not to use anything too small. And if I had this is a quart-sized mason jar, and there's a video out there. It's kind of funny. I'm not going to link it or anything like that. You can probably find it. Of a gentleman who put the 1 tablespoon of sugar and the 2 tablespoons of yeast. And then he didn't fill it all the way up, but it was right about here. And he didn't have the lid screwed down, but he just lightly had the jar lid on the mason jar, and he left it sitting on his counter. And he came back, I don't know how long later, and it was all over his counter because it had just expanded up and everything was oozing over the top. So just a reminder, if you want to make a double batch, like I could make a double batch in here and only fill it halfway, and I would still probably be okay. But then I'd have to go mix that double batch into like a 5 gallon bucket and add water when it's out in the garden. And it's just easier to take it up there when it's in a container like this, because then I can just pour it in. So rate-wise, how I do it, and again, everything is how I do it. You don't have to do it how I do it. You can decide that that's not going to work for you. Or you like somebody else's video better, and I don't care. I just do what I do and share that information with you. So I have several 2-foot by 8-foot beds. So for each one of these gallons, I'm going to be putting that in a 2-foot by 4-foot section. Now my drippers are set up in a grid of 2 feet each, so that's going to be 8 square feet per gallon. And so it's about 2 cups per 1 square foot. And this is not being poured on plants, and I don't have any seeds in there yet. So I'm just waking up that soil so I can get stuff planted. The beds, you want to make sure that they're already fairly moist before you add this. Otherwise, it's just going to absorb. These are in my hoop house, and there's no way to really get water to them. And there's no snow falling on them or rain falling on them during the winter. So I first had to amend them and then start watering them and getting them to wake up. So for each one of these, it's going to be half, so 8 square feet in the one half, and then 8 square feet is in the other half, so 2 gallons. I will have to make more for my squash beds. I just want you to see how easy this is and how you can utilize things that aren't expensive. I have friends in Florida. Hi, Dave. Hi, Toby. That they also are lucky enough to be close enough to the ocean they can go get seaweed. And in the case of seaweed, you go get it, in the morning when the tide, comes up so that it's fresh. You're going to have to take it back to wherever you live, rinse it off, get the salt out of it. So do a few rinsings. It's usually easier if you have like a screen or something to put the seaweed on, rinse it a couple times because you don't want all that salt. Let it dry, crumble it up, however you decide to do that. I've seen people use weed eaters. They put it in a trash can and use their weed eater to crunch it up. Some people will run it through their leaf blowers. If they have a reverse, they can suck the seaweed into the leaf blower, let it chop up, and you can put the fertilizer down. I don't live near an ocean, so yeah. So this is what I do to keep costs down. If you're lucky enough and you live in Denver and you have lots of trees and leaves, when the leaves fall, you can make leaf mulch. You break those leaves down in the compost pile. That'll save you on any compost bills. You can put the leaves dry, although I would still shred them up directly in your beds, and over the winter as the snow falls on them or the rain falls on them, that's just organic matter, and that is the best thing in the world for your beds is organic matter. And yeast is an organic thing. So it'll help break it down. As I mentioned it before, you can put it in your compost pile, give your compost pile a kickstart. I don't use a lot of manures in my beds. Usually only every couple years do I add manure. And a lot of that is just because it's salt. I don't know what the cattle has eaten or the sheep's, things like that. I would prefer not using any manure from a horse, and that's just because the weed seeds don't die. They don't break down enough because they only have one stomach. I don't know how many stomachs a cow has, but it breaks it down better. But it, if that field has been sprayed, the hay field that the person got the hay out of, if they're not just a roaming cow that's been roaming around the plains or whatever, if it's been sprayed with any of the herbicides that contain the ingredients that cause grazon contamination, well, you can kill many plants. Nightshades are the most susceptible, beans, things like that. They get deformed, and grazon does not deteriorate very fast. Its half-life is 5 years. So think about it. For 10 years, are you not going to use your garden, or are you going to get rid of the soil and put it somewhere where it's not, like maybe on your lawn or something like that, where it doesn't hurt it as much? So I try and stay away from all that stuff. A lot of people are very open about, they know exactly where it's coming from, their straw, their hay, everything like that, and they can control that. But so if I had plants in my bed, now that I'm done rambling, I would probably feed them 3/4 of a cup to a cup per plant. And, like peas are smaller and you plant them closer together, but think of a squash. And I usually water it right at the base of the stem. Same thing. You could do the same thing on your tomatoes, your peppers. Again, there's nothing in this that says it's best for this. I mean, you're going to water your flowers with this, but think of water's pretty cheap. If you buy fertilizer already pre-mixed and it's not a concentrate, then, you know, you're getting mostly water anyways. So give it a try. Maybe do a test. Do one plant with it, one plant without it. But just remember, it is not high in nitrogen or phosphorus or anything like that. So you may have to use additional products if you need to bump your nitrogen up or something like that. But pretty much, if you keep your beds amended very well with compost, you get the microbes going and stuff like that, you don't have to necessarily use very much fertilizer at all. You know, maybe when they're all blooming and everything like that, you might have to give them an extra drink or so. Now, when my containers, yeah, I got to provide more stuff because there's not as much soil in there. And so that plant is only living in a 5-gallon container. So yes, I have to supplement more. But, you know, if you've got larger beds, especially if they're, you know, 1.5 feet deep or taller, you should be able to, you know, go along with amending your soil and use things like the alfalfa pellets. You know, and I usually soak my alfalfa pellets before I apply them in the spring and in the fall, just because they get going better and I don't have to, you know, wait for them to hydrate within the soil. But you can put alfalfa pellets right on top of your soil. And as they absorb water when you're watering your plants or your system's watering your plants. If you're on a dripper system, I'd probably at least put it under the soil so it doesn't decay. Sorry, my phone's ringing. No, you want it to decay. I'd put it under the soil so it will decay and not keep drying out and mixing. And you'll see, you know, over time, if you keep making your soil better, it's going to be better and better each year. Now, if you skip years and stuff like that and you wonder, well, my garden didn't do so well, it's just because those nutrients are depleted. And even if you use just Miracle Grow soil, your first year, you're probably going to do pretty good with it. It's just that it's not the best type of material to use. And if you don't give back to it, it's not going to stay alive because your soil is a living thing. So, you know, take care of your soil and your plants will thrive. Gardening is not something that should be hard. If you have good soil, you treat your plants well, you know, some years, yeah, you know, the weather, there's nothing we can do about the weather. But as long as it's a decent year and everything like that, you should get a fairly good harvest. It shouldn't have to be hard. And I just want to stress that because there's so many people that give up after a couple years. And I still think it's soil related. I don't really know. Maybe they don't have a way to cover their plants or protect their plants from critters and the weather. But if they have a decent setup, you know, it shouldn't have to be hard. And it really isn't. I'm not an expert by any means, but I do the best I can and I pass that information along to you. I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, please subscribe or at least hit the like button when you're watching this video. Have a wonderful day and happy gardening.